Here's today's sentence. Tell me what you hear. She opens the door and looks at him without a word. If you heard looks and word, you're doing okay. If everything in between was a blur, I understand. That's 5 weak syllables getting squeezed in between looks, strong, and word, strong. Let's break it down slowly. She opens the door and looks at him without a word. She opens the door and looks at him without a word. She opens the door and looks at him without a word. English has a heartbeat. Listen for the beat in this sentence. She opens the door and looks at him without a word. Now, that was pretty fast. There's one section in there that even a native speaker would have trouble saying fast, so the rhythm gets pushed a little bit. Looks and word. Looks at him without a word. And if I put that in the context of a sentence, it's actually hard to say. But those 5 syllables, at him without a word, at him without a. 5 syllables get churned like butter. And actually, it's hard even for a native speaker to say, but they try anyway. And the rhythm gets shifted a little bit. The clapping is not quite perfect anymore. Reductions. There's 2 reductions in this sentence. The first is and. And becomes n. Door and looks. Door and looks. Door and looks. The second reduction is him. Him becomes im. Looks at him. Looks at him. Looks at him. Now let's take a look at another word. The very first word in this sentence. She. If you recall from other videos, he often becomes e. We can't do that in this case with she. And there's a couple reasons. First, it's the beginning of the sentence, so especially in North America, we often say the first word clearly. And this being the first, she is clear. But the other reason is, if we lose the sh, she would become e, and that might sound like he. So to prevent the confusion, you always say the sh for she. She. Liaisons. Let's take a look at the liaisons in this sentence. Okay. Opens the. Opens the. Opens the. Opens the. Opens up. Opens the door. Opens the door. The next one is door and. And becomes n, and we get doorin. Doorin. Opens the doorin. Then we have looks at. Looks at. Looks at. And at him. At him. At him. Okay. Now, let's take a look at for a moment. Often, at comes after look. Look at, look at. Look at this, look at that. However, in this case, we have a person looking at another person. She's angry at him. She doesn't feel comfortable with him and she's silent. She doesn't say a word. In this context, that at sounds fairly hostile. Think of it this way. When you throw a ball, you throw a ball to a person or you throw a ball at a person. Sometimes at has an aggressive feeling. Now, let's see. There's another one. Without a. Without a. Without a. Kind of a strong liaison there. Without a word. Consonant clusters. Some of my students don't have consonant clusters in their languages. In that case, it's best if you make a consonant cluster space in your brain for listening. One way to do that is to pronounce it correctly yourself. If you pronounce it correctly yourself, then you can hear it better. In this sentence, we have looks, k, s. Sometimes I've heard students say lukusu, lukusu. Lukusu would be 3 syllables, but there's no u in between the k and the s. Looks, looks. It's going to be one beat. Looks, looks at. Be careful with that one. Shadowing. Now it's your turn. Remember, we want your voice on top of my voice. Okay, 3 times. She opens the door and looks at him without a word. She opens the door and looks at him without a word. She opens the door and looks at him without a word. That's 3 times, but that's not nearly enough to really master it. For deep mastery, I recommend 20 times. You can find an audio on my site. Go to the audio and try shadowing 20 times. The link is below in the description. See you next week.